Hello and welcome to the Gonzales Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell,
And I'm Patrick Gonzales.
and Patrick and I are going to continue our discussion today on the release of the Gonzales Poll, which was a statewide poll that's being issued in parts this week. Last time we spoke about the presidential polling and the approval ratings for the candidates. Right now, we're going to talk about Governor Moore's job approval rating and some transportation issues. So, without further ado, Patrick, what's going on?
Well, first of all, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
What is, and I'm being serious here, what is a due and why shouldn't we further it?
Without further ado, then you can't go on because if you just have the do, then you're staying in the same place. It's an inertia theory, Patrick. It has
Gotcha.
to do with advanced math. So,
I had to quit school after the sixth grade, so I don't think
well,
we got to inertia before. But thank you for explaining it to me because for 60 years people have been telling me without further ado, and I've never been able to find out what a do is and why we shouldn't further it. And now you have explained it. Thank you very much.
maybe that's something you can take a poll on next time.
I am going to. How do you spell a
Eh,
do?
Well,
I know
I'll
how
have
to
to look
spell
that
it
up.
in French. Okay.
I'll have to look that up on the AI or whatever it's called.
Okay.
All right. So we have the Wes Moore approval rating out. Patrick, the numbers I see are approve 64, disapprove 24. What are your thoughts on that? What do you see in the breakdown that gives this sort of lopsided result?
If I'm sitting down on State Circle on the second floor, I'm saying yowza, yowza, yowza. Governor Moore, he got a bounce out of the Windy City. I think he got a bounce out of so far how he's handled the Key Bridge collapse. Because that is his numbers today represent a 33% bump for him since February. In other words, his margin in February was 58 approved, 28 disapproved. That's 30 point plus, which isn't bad. Today it's 64, 24. That's 40% to the good. And that 10-point bump from 30 to 40 represents a 33% boost in that margin. I'll take that any day of the week. Governor Moore is he's on the move. And it's going to be interesting to watch over the next couple of years because there's another governor in a neighboring state who's also touted as being on the move. That's Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. So to watch those two go at it, and they're not going to go at it individually. I'm sure they get along just fine. But just watch the media assess the two of them over the next 3 or 4 years is going to make it worth me getting up every morning.
I sense the same thing you did back in the spring when the Key Bridge episode happened. He put together that team, a central command, I think it was called, with the Coast Guard and the feds and Army Corps of Engineers and state and other federal agencies, and had within a matter of weeks, I think it was 4 weeks, that channel cleared out. A lot of national attention with that, and he helped marshal in some federal resources with that. And I think that was his launching pad to where he is now. I agree with you that the performance that he had at the DNC convention with his speech in prime time was also beneficial to him. And I think, as you say in your report, he comes out of that convention with uh, full of steam. He's full steam ahead at
He comes
64
out with,
24.
come on, let's flash back for a minute, you and me, brother. Let's go
All
back
right.
to 1980. We come out
Sure.
of the Iowa caucus. We're with George Herbert Hoover Bush's campaign, and he's just beating Ronald Reagan. And he had the big Mo. Remember the big Mo?
The big
I never
Mo.
did
That's
meet
right.
Mo, but I never did meet Mo, but he or she seemed like a really nice person. And I would say Wes Moore's got some of the Mo. And also, speaking back to the handling of the Key Bridge being a big boost for Governor Moore, I think a lot of people credit Brandon Scott, the mayor of Baltimore, his reelection on his handling of the Key Bridge. I never saw the mayor in dealing with it, but he certainly dealt with it. I don't watch news a whole lot, by the way. And a lot of people said he did a good job and credit. And that's when the polls, I mean, a month before that, in other words, the Key Bridge collapse happened in March 26th or something, around the end of March. Right. A month before, the end of February, Sheila Dixon was the odds-on favorite to win that race. So that flipped. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see. But I think Governor Moore is in just today is in just an excellent position. And I would say, well, I know this for a fact because I've been polling this state since 1985. No Democratic governor in the state of Maryland has had approval in the mid-60s since William Donald Schaefer's first term as governor back in the late 1980s. We ain't going to talk about his second term. Yeah, let you and me talk about his second term. But no, seriously, no Democrat in Maryland, and that would include Governor Paris Glendening and Governor Martin O'Malley. None came close.
And in the late 80s, first term Schaefer, that's when a lot of things got done.
Oh my lordy. Tell me about what happened on your side of the bridge, Clay.
Hey, we had something called Reach the Beach, which a lot of people over here complained about, but after it was done, a lot of the traffic problems were resolved. I live here on Kent Island, and it used to be every day, multiple mile backups. Now, although there are backups, not so bad. It's almost tolerable. And that Reach the Beach program was, I think, his marquee infrastructure program. And I noticed, Patrick, in your poll, infrastructure funding was a large, overwhelming support for it. Large, overwhelming support.
Well, we asked Maryland voters, in their opinion, how important is it to them for the state to invest in Maryland's transportation infrastructure. And what we found was 95% of Maryland voters say it is important for the state to invest in transportation infrastructure. 61% very important. And it gets back to no matter what, you've got to get from A to B. And the only one way to do it. Now, you know, I'm a little old fashioned. I heard the other day that there was something out called an automobile. Well, as you well know, when I come visit you, I take my horse and buggy across the Bay Bridge. It takes a while, but I still travel by horse and buggy. Those newfangled machines scare me. But, you know, so no matter what, we've got to get, and however you do it, we've got to get as citizens of this country, as citizens of this world, human beings have to be able to get from point A to point B.
I noticed you had one of those Tesla EV horses that
I did. Oh yeah.
That's just new technology. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Oh, absolutely. I don't have to buy any oats or feed. I mean, that it's an electric horse, a Tesla horse, and I thank Elon Musk very much for inventing that for me. Yes.
Now, this overwhelming support for transportation systems. We have a problem with revenues from gas tax because there are more RVs on the road. Do you think this is EVs?
More EVs. Yeah.
EVs on the road. Do you think that this will cause the legislature and possibly Governor Moore to do something about having the EV vehicles pay more towards the fair share of the road revenues and for the construction?
Well, I think it's a very complex issue. Number one, I think, and I've tested this in the past before, this mandate by 2035 to do away with all new gasoline powered cars in Maryland is crazy. That is a time frame that just isn't realistic. So you got to deal with some of this kind of over the top push from these people that are trying to push that. It's just not realistic, and it doesn't make sense. But what does make sense is less fuel, less money is being collected because of electric vehicles for the gas tax. So you've got to figure it out. Back when I first got my license and first got my horse and buggy, the transportation systems were funded by taxes on the whips that I use on my horses. Now I whip them nice and gently because I love horses and I love horse racing, and I kind of model that. But soon after I started driving, by the time I got into my 20s, it was obvious that the tax on the whip just wasn't going to cut it. So that's when they introduced the gas tax, the gasoline tax. So I lived through that, and now the Lord has fortunately blessed upon me enough perspective. Now I'm now seeing we're going to have to eventually evolve into different ways of collecting revenue. And this is another thing. We're going to have to eventually have to do away with fossil fuel generated energy, because we're going to run out of fossil fuel. But Clay, come on, let's be real. An honest broker is going to tell us what fossil fuels, the known resources at current consumption, are going to run out in 300-400 years. So yes, we've got to deal with it. We've got to deal with it in a realistic, not hysterical manner. And as a country, I think in a world, and as a world, we're going to do that. So I'm very optimistic in the long run.
Well, I think that for transportation projects, given the approval for Governor Moore, that he has a lot of political capital going into this session and the next session or two to push forward some sensible infrastructure programs that need to be funded by the capital budget and make transportation systems in this state a bit better, because there are some areas where it's terrible. There's always talk
Absolutely.
about another span of the Bay Bridge. I know at this point that's cost prohibitive. It's in the tens of billions, but it's something that needs to be slowly taken a look at.
It does. I'm no expert, but you put another bridge, that doesn't solve the 10, 20, 30 miles before on the western shore and the 10, 20, 50 miles on the eastern shore. So, it's not a simple answer, but it's definitely something that, as a society, we've got to deal with, and we will. And we've got to come up with new creative ways that are tapped into the reality of the world, i.e., how are people getting around, and recognize it in sort of a orderly kind of logical manner. And we'll get there. I'm no expert on transportation issues by any stretch. So I don't, but there are ways. Brighter minds than mine will figure that
out. And mine too. Well, Patrick, it's time to bid you an adieu. I'm using that word again because I want to.
And adieu. Well, if you're going to use adieu, I'm going to use my favorite word of all time. Arrivederci, baby. But I don't mean arrivederci, baby, in that I'm trying to blow you off right now. I just wanted to say it.
Hey, Patrick, we're going to continue this discussion tomorrow with part 2 of the statewide Gonzales poll. So until then.
And what's part 2, Clay? What's part 2, Clay?
I don't know. You haven't released it yet. I don't know what it is.
Well, let's give the audience a little tease. Part 2 is going to be the U.S. Senate matchup between Prince George's County Executive Angela Alsobrooks and former Governor Larry Hogan. oh, it's going to be a really groovy.
Groovy.
Oh,
Hard.
yeah.
Well, Patrick, time to say goodbye. Say goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.